This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And today we're back in a galaxy far, far away as he takes a look at the weapons of Star Wars Battlefront 2.
So the last of the iconic Star Wars weapons is Boba Fett's blaster, and was built by Bapty & Co. on a Webley & Scott signal pistol.
If you want to see more of Jonathan's take on the firearms of Star Wars, make sure to subscribe so you can check out our previous video on the iconic franchise. If there are any other games, guns, and mechanics that you guys want to see Jonathan break down, let us know in the comment section below. And if you'd like to help out the Royal Armouries Museum and continue to support Jonathan's work, check out the links in the description of this video. Right, over to Jonathan.
Pause there. The A280 is another old school Star Wars weapon we first see in Empire Strikes Back. So we had, for the first time, we saw the Rebels as an organized military. We saw the A280, effectively assault rifles. They're like laser assault rifles. And so it's logical that they're based on real-world assault rifles, dressed up in the traditional Star Wars way. Now, in the actual film, there are two completely different guns used as the basis for what's at least called in media the same weapon. So the A280 is an AR-15 based one, where the body is an AR-15. And then here it's weirdly interchangeable with the German Sturmgewehr of the Second World War, which slightly more fits the Star Wars aesthetic, I think. So the one that they chose for the Battlefront games was the Sturmgewehr. So it's sort of, of all of the Star Wars weapons, the real world gun fits the sci-fi role the best, I would suggest. Okay, pause there. So then the next gun we see there is, I had to look this up, I must admit, I am a Star Wars fan, but obviously not good enough a Star Wars fan. This is the RT-97 heavy blaster, but this is based on the Second World War German MG-15 aircraft machine gun. Lends itself quite well to being dressed up as a sci-fi gun. Albeit they didn't really do that much to it. It's almost as it would be taken from an aircraft, with the exception of the scope and scope mount. And we see this a lot with Star Wars weapons, that the major dressing up parts, if you like, are a scope and scope mount of some kind. Because back in the 70s and early 80s, infantry type weapons with optical sights were not at all common. And it immediately makes something look more futuristic. An interesting point actually in terms of gameplay, I think, must be a challenge for developers to sort of balance the weapons without them all being very similar, because we see a lot of the same class of weapon being used. Well, I suppose you have the artistic license of rate of fire, power of shot, color of laser bolts, alt fire modes, all of that. But on the face of it, a lot of them are the same. You know, they do the same job. That's just got me thinking about gameplay versus reality, and also, in this case, fantasy. Okay, so this one is a fairly iconic staple of the Star Wars universe. The DLT-19D, which is, we think for gameplay reasons, a designated marksman's rifle. Maybe that's what the D stands for, I don't know. The First Order in that era of the Star Wars universe have not been shown to have an accurate or precision rifle. So they've taken what is actually an original trilogy design, the DLT-19, and they've modified that. It's obviously still in service 30 years later, and it's been modified with, I'm not really sure what, other than a scope, which is obviously important for an accurate rifle. So to the DLT-19, the traditional one, which I grew up on, as it were, seeing stormtroopers carrying that, it's barely modified MG-34. Now, because it uses plasma or whatever energy source, there's no belt of ammunition that's running through it, so that instantly makes it look different anyway. But there's very little change. We see the bipod folded under the barrel shroud there. I don't think I've ever seen a stormtrooper use that, which is in common with their apparently dreadful training. Apart from that, it's a 1930s 7.92mm German machine gun in space. The DH17 Blaster pistol. We're introduced to this in A New Hope, in the famous opening scene of that. And it was the basic design of the Sterling submachine gun. Basically, the Imperial blaster is just a Sterling. The Rebel equivalent is also based on the Sterling, but what they did for the original movie was cut it right down, added this distinctive sort of bullet-shaped barrel shroud, and what's called a single-point optical sight. But it really was all about the visual look of these things. I don't think you ever see anyone use a scope. It seems to be, I don't think I used it when I played this game for a short period, but it seems to be quite effective for a pistol. The prequels had their own distinct aesthetic when it came to the weapons. This is an interesting choice. So the Calico, many people won't know what the Calico is. I'll grab one. This is the M961, which is the submachine gun version. And this is an interesting reflection of the aesthetic they went for with the prequel films to distance them from what came before. They do kind of look more advanced in some ways. This is a 1980s American submachine gun / pistol, depending on the configuration. Otherwise, not much has changed. The stock comes off. It looks even more like the one from the prequels. So they fitted a scope to it for that Star Wars look. It's already got the foregrip, and then they just added some metal parts to the plastic parts to make to break up the outline. It's almost like camouflage when you're designing movie props to fit a certain aesthetic, I suppose. Well, what can we say about this thing? The thing about the sequel trilogy, in terms of prop design, I love most of the production design of those films. Some of the guns are a bit disappointing, and this kind of sums up why, really. It sort of doesn't look like much of anything. It's not based on any real-world gun. Not everything in Star Wars has to be based on something that we recognize, but I always think it lends a unique look and stops it just being any old ray gun from a generic sci-fi property. And unfortunately, that's kind of what this looks like. So that's not the fault of the game. That's the source material. I'm quite happy with the black and white look to the First Order weapons. I don't mind that. It took me a while to get used to it, but I'm quite happy with it now. But it's just this boxy contraption and just does the same job as, say, a DLT-19 or something, but in a less exciting way. So I can't get too excited about that one. Now, this one threw me for a loop because I didn't recognize it, and I didn't remember its original incarnation from Star Wars Jedi Knight, which I completed way back in the day. So there was an Imperial heavy repeater in that. Now, when there wasn't such a variety of Star Wars weapons as there is now, they had to sort of invent a category for a rapid fire blaster with a bit more punch to it, I guess. And what they've done for the Battlefront games is come up with another new weapon, which we've just seen, but it is quite similar, or at least the basic layout is quite similar to this Imperial heavy repeater from the old Jedi Knight games. But they had to change it up because it's quite low poly model and not much detail to it. So same basic configuration, but I like what they've done with it because they've made it fit much better than the Jedi Knight version, which, if anything, looks more prequel trilogy maybe. But this version, it's more black. It's got the very reminiscent pistol grip selector switch of the Sterling, and the back end of the actual receiver is a bit more Sterling, so it implies a bit more of a blast tech lineage there. But yeah, quite like the look of that. So this is an interesting one. I think this is another invention for the Battlefront series. I've said previously that the cycler rifle is the only gun in the game that fires a projectile, but I'm not so sure because this thing, which I do vaguely remember from playing the game now that I think about it, is essentially a space shotgun. It doesn't eject any cartridge case of any kind, so perhaps it's caseless slug-throwing technology and is therefore a projectile weapon like the cycler rifle. Or perhaps it's firing some sort of concentrated balls of energy. I don't know. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense in universe, but then things don't have to make sense. Slightly reminiscent of a SPAS 12 and the heat shield on it, but you have to really squint to see that similarity, I think. You need variety in weapons in a video game, and we don't see shotguns in Star Wars. Maybe that means we shouldn't have shotguns in Battlefront. Discuss. So the last of the, and I'm overusing this word really badly, but iconic Star Wars weapons is Boba Fett's blaster, which is fairly unique to him, I think, in the Star Wars universe, and was built by Bapty & Co. on a Webley & Scott signal pistol. You can definitely see the back of the barrel, the frame. I think the hammer is still visible on that prop, and the thumb hole stock, which replaces the grips. Because this is based on the Webley Mark VI revolver. The mechanism is the same, double action revolver, and it's a convenient way to launch flares. Very important for communication in the First World War because radios are gigantic and have to be carried by a donkey or something. Obviously, it's an offensive weapon in the Star Wars universe, and it's dressed up with a longer finned barrel, the usual gubbins that are added to a Star Wars weapon. But underneath, that's what it is. We are a museum, as you know, the Royal Armouries. If you'd like to donate, absolutely no pressure to do so, but there are links in the description, also for our membership scheme. We've also started doing a series of short videos on our own YouTube channel at the Royal Armouries, so feel free to check out our YouTube channel as well. Thanks very much.